good afternoon, time appropriate greetings. Yesterday was July 1st, Canada Day. July 4th is coming. So, best wishes to listeners from wherever you're listening from. My name is Dewan Ahmed, and I'm your host for the ShipTalk podcast, where we talk about the ins and outs, ups and downs of software delivery. And I'm super pumped to kick off season 4 with Nathen Harvey, DORA lead and developer advocate at Google Cloud. Welcome, Nathen.
Dewan, thank you so much for having me. And what an honor to kick off season 4 with you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love the shirt. So, for listeners who are listening to the podcast, Nathen is wearing an avocado shirt. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you can see it. So, tell us about the shirt to kick off.
Yeah, this shirt is kind of a signature of mine. I tend to wear it at a lot of customer meetings, conference presentations, podcasts, and so forth. I've been wearing an avocado shirt for a long, long time. It is kind of a nod to our role as developer advocates. But this shirt in particular is very special because the people that make this shirt, they've discontinued it. And I needed a new one. Gleb at Harness sourced one on the aftermarket and shipped it to me. And so for that, I'm forever grateful.
That is fantastic. I have to ping Gleb so that I can grab a copy of that shirt. I have a pen, an avocado pen. Again,
Nice.
apologies to the listener who are listening on the podcast, but I have an avocado pen. And again, in reference to our role as developer advocate. So before we actually kick off our topics, why don't you tell us, Nathen Harvey, how did it all start? How did your journey start? And that led to DevOps, SRE, and being a developer advocate at Google Cloud.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, I'm very old, so it's a long journey. I'll try to keep it short. Um, Essentially, I found myself in tech in the very early days of the first internet boom. So before the year 2000, I was in tech doing a lot of different things, and I've been very lucky to have just a really great career in technology. I would say that I've done everything from being a software engineer to an SRE or a system administrator. I've basically held every single role across the technology sphere, which has been really great. That includes things like customer support, sales engineer, and more. But sort of most recently, maybe along sort of the DevOps horizon, I was working in an organization when DevOps, like the word first took hold and really started to grow in some momentum. At that particular organization at the time, we were running all of our infrastructure in a data center. We were in the process of moving it all to the cloud and automating all of this. And through this automation is where I discovered Chef software and really a connection to open source. I eventually left that company and went to Chef and helped lead up the community there. I was the vice president of community engineering, which meant that I was responsible for our open source offerings and how our engineers work together with the open source contributors. I was responsible for developer relations and developer advocacy, working together with customers in the industry, really to help understand how we can best utilize infrastructure as code to deliver what we want for our customers and for our businesses. While I was there, I was very lucky to work with folks like Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble, who later went on to found a company called DORA. When I left Chef, I went to Google Cloud to continue my journey as a developer advocate, helping teams and organizations get better at DevOps and SRE practices, and just in general, helping them leverage technology. Shortly after I joined Google Cloud, the company that Jez and Nicole and Gene had founded, DORA, was acquired by Google Cloud. And so I was kind of reunited with both Nicole and Jez, got to work together with them. Nicole has since left. Jez is now working on other areas within Google Cloud, and I've taken over running DORA, which has been really great.
That is fantastic. And it does get to show how small the tech world is. You work with someone, you meet someone, and then down the road, you again find either somehow communicating or working together.
Absolutely. I think it's also a good reminder of not that we necessarily need it, but maybe sometimes it helps. We should be really welcoming and inclusive and work well with the other humans that we come into contact with because, as you said, it is a small world. Even if we aren't working with them tomorrow, we might be working with them again in the future.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Now, I hear you mention about like open source team, open source community, leading developer advocacy. So you have worked with some of the best teams and open source communities out there. How do you relate some of the lessons you learned that relate to modern software delivery?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's both a matter of experience in getting to work with all of these teams and sort of see how they're doing things and so forth. I can share lessons learned and importantly pitfalls that I myself have fallen into. I'll never forget when I was first learning, or actually before I was learning how to like automate infrastructure with infrastructure as code. I was working with a mentor and I built out a bunch of things all by hand. I was very proud of my servers that I built by hand. I gave them all names. I cared for them like they were pets. And my mentor came to me and he said, there are these tools that can help automate away all of that work that you've been doing. And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, Tom, I'm too busy to automate. Which, of course, is a ridiculous statement. Too busy to automate. Well, if I automate, I'll have more time. I'll be less busy, so then I can make additional improvements. But that sort of phrase right there, number one, it haunts me. But number two, it also reminds me that every one of us, and certainly every team that we're working on, we get so caught up in the things that we're doing, it can sometimes be very difficult to pause, take stock of where we are, and decide what do we want to change? How do we want to push the status quo, change the status quo, and make some sort of, even if it's a small improvement in the way that we work. And so I think it's stories like that that really keep me inspired and keep me going. Like, how do we just make a small change? I want to change everything. I know I can't do that, but can I make one small change today? And then with DORA, we have this community of practitioners and leaders that are taking insights from DORA and putting them into practice. We come together regularly as a community to learn from and share with one another. And I think that's the real thing. It's not listening to a single voice, it's rather getting the collective wisdom from the community that really helps drive these sorts of improvements.
That is awesome to hear. And that's a nice segue to Dora. So those listeners, so when I look for Dora on internet, it's Dora the Explorer comes up. Why don't you tell us about what Dora is and why has it been such a cornerstone of the DevOps world?
Yeah, for sure. So DORA is a research program that's been running for well over a decade now. The research actually was originated out of Puppet Labs, which was in the same space as Chef, infrastructure as code, and it started in the early days of the DevOps movement. So the folks at Puppet Labs really wanted to understand what's happening with DevOps. Is this a real thing? Where is it going, and so forth. And so they started this research program. And this research is really focused, as I said earlier, on how do technology teams get better. And its center of gravity is around software delivery performance. Software delivery performance because certainly in the early days of DevOps, and unfortunately still in many organizations today, the act of taking software that was written and getting it into the hands of users is full of friction and full of challenges. And the reality is that software that was written or that is written doesn't actually provide any value until it's in the hands of the users. And so this is a really critical moment of the software delivery lifecycle or the software development lifecycle. How do we get this code, this technology into the hands of users? This is where we can first get feedback on it and decide what do we want to do next. So the research really has this center of gravity around software delivery performance. And one of the big questions at the early onset of the research was how do you measure software delivery performance? And this was where something that many listeners maybe have heard of, the DORA 4 keys or the DORA metrics. These are those software delivery performance indicators that really tell us how we're doing with software delivery performance. Those metrics focus on two high-level concepts, throughput and stability. So how much change are you able to ship through the system? How much software are you able to deliver? How fast? How safe? And so forth. And then the stability of those changes. When we ship things, we want to make sure that they work when they land in the production environment. They don't cause incidents or outages or require, immediate human intervention. So DORA starts with a center of gravity around software delivery performance, and then the research looks both to what are the outcomes of better software delivery performance, things like better organizational performance and better well-being for the people on your team. But we also look at what drives software delivery performance, and we call those the capabilities and conditions. And those are things that we investigate very deeply every single year. Capabilities and conditions might include things like, are you using version control? Do you practice continuous integration? What does your change approval process look like? Do you have good documentation? What's the culture like on your team? All of these things, we try to take a really complete view of technology-driven teams and organizations. I should also mention that the research is fully program and platform agnostic. It's not about specific tools, but rather those capabilities and conditions that you need as a team.
Well, that is great to hear. So you talked about the high-performing teams, you talked about the four KPIs. I want to touch on the often forgotten part about the culture
Mhm.
part of DevOps, because tech has been changing massively with AI and different ways of teams working. They're working in person, hybrid, remote. Are we seeing teams now being more aligned to the business needs? How has cultural misalignment have changed over the last decade or so?
Yeah, throughout the research program, we find that culture is one of the biggest predictors of those performance metrics and the outcomes that we really care about. And we have used sort of ways to assess culture from a number of different sources. Primarily, though, we use a cultural assessment that was developed by Dr. Ron Westrom, who's a sociologist. He created this topology of organizational cultures that really looks at the three different types of organizational cultures that you might encounter. He calls those cultures the pathological, the bureaucratic, and the generative cultures. As you might imagine, we see the best performance happening in generative cultures. And what are the characteristics of a generative culture? Well, there's a lot of high levels of collaboration and information sharing across teams and across the organization. When something goes wrong, the organization uses this as an opportunity to learn. What can we learn from this thing that went wrong? Whether that's an incident or an outage in your production systems, or maybe you missed a particular sales transaction that you were trying to accomplish, like maybe you didn't close that deal. Let's use that as an opportunity to learn and then take those lessons into the future work that we're doing. And so culture plays a huge, huge role in everything that we research.
So we're kicking off season four with the theme of AI in software delivery. And I was reading up on DORA website that the research also focuses on the intersection of AI. Could you please tell our listeners how AI is intersecting with the research that's happening at DORA, and how this would impact the engineering teams?
Yeah, we are super interested in understanding what are the impacts of all new things that are happening within the technology space. And Dora, because it's been around for a while, was lucky enough to really be around as a lot of organizations were moving out of data centers and into the cloud. And we got to witness that transition and research it along the way. And now we're really excited as we sort of feel like we're at the beginning of really incorporating AI into the full software development lifecycle. We get to see signals of that in the research itself. And so in March of this year, which is 2024, sorry, 2025, I don't even know which year it is. In March of 2025, we published a report, The Impact of Generative AI in Software Development. And this report leans on some of our findings from 2024, as well as some new research that we've conducted. And essentially, we're trying to really understand what is the impact of adopting AI across every aspect of your team. And we see some really strong signals there. We see signals that show that as you increase your AI adoption, there's a lot of good individual benefits. For example, as an individual, I might feel more productive in my job. I might spend more time in like deep work or flow, and I have higher job satisfaction. And even if we scope it out a little bit further and look at some of the team level outcomes, as you increase your AI adoption, we're seeing things like documentation quality improve, code quality improve, technical debt actually go down. All of these are really, really strong signals. Like I said, we try to get a comprehensive view of how things interact. Unfortunately, one of the things that we also saw in our 2024 data was that as you increase your adoption of AI and your use of AI within your team, we saw that software delivery performance actually falls off. Your throughput goes down a little bit, and then the stability of those changes actually gets even worse. So this means that we're seeing more rollbacks of deployments that are happening, or more hot fixes that have to go out as you increase your usage of AI. Now, it should be noted that that's data that we've collected in 2024. We're currently collecting data right now for 2025 to get continuing updates on what are the actual impacts. And so I'll just throw in a quick note to listeners, dora.dev/survey. You can go and take our survey right now. That's open until July 18th. That's going to give us real good insight into how AI is impacting your team and your organization.
We'll be sure to link in the video description or in the podcast description, dora.dev/survey. If you're listening before July 18th, 2025, please take on the survey because your feedback would be super important. Uh, One challenge for entrepreneurs or engineering leaders who are just starting a new company. So let's say they have a company of size 10,
Yeah.
and they're wondering when is the right time to dig into the findings of DORA and implement it. Is it too soon? Now they have a team of 500. Is it too late? How have you seen different engineering teams adopt these best practices in their journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dewan. And I think that it really depends, of course. But I would encourage any team of any size to look at the DORA research and sort of get an understanding of some of our findings and so forth. Unfortunately, a lot of teams find those four metrics, those software delivery performance metrics that we talked about, and they stop there. Those software delivery performance metrics are nothing more than indicators, and they should be used by a team to help them understand how are we doing today, and how do we compare that to how we did 6 months ago, or how will we be doing 6 months from now. But the more important thing than those indicators or those metrics are the improvements that you're going to make. So what changes are you going to put into place? And now if you're just getting started, everything that you do is a change. So, like you said, you want to start off with some good foundational practices. DORA can give you an indicator into what some of those good foundational practices are. And if you're at a team of 500, you've grown. There's certainly an area for you to improve. DORA's tagline is "Get better at getting better." We really want to help teams identify where they are today so that they can make a decision about what to improve next. And then, like I said earlier, you take a small step, a small step, a small step, a small step. Each one of these small steps may move you forward. Of course, some of them may move you backwards. Either way, that's a success. As long as you take the lessons that you learned with each of those iterations and bake it into what are you going to do next. So use that to help inform where you're going. And then finally, I always like to remind teams that DORA goes out and researches as many teams as possible around the world. And so our findings are really what's happening in the industry today. But the reality is that, Dewan, you don't work for the world, you work for Harness. And even within Harness, you work on specific areas of Harness. So you have to take our broad-based findings and contextualize them on your team. And so I like to say that you should use DORA's findings as your hypothesis for the next experiment that you want to run. As an example, DORA says that documentation quality really drives software delivery performance and other outcomes. So now you can use that as a hypothesis. We believe that by improving our documentation quality, as measured by these particular characteristics that DORA helps us measure, we expect to see an improvement in our change lead time. We're going to be able to ship software faster. Great. That's a wonderful hypothesis. Now you have an experiment that you've designed, and you can go run that experiment and see how does that work.
I can almost visualize the product leader and all the practitioners who champion developer documentation quality doing double thumbs to hear
Yeah.
that.
Well, I would definitely refer you to the last 4 years or so of the DORA research reports because we've done deep dives into documentation quality. And then bringing it back to AI, as I said earlier, we see that as you adopt more AI, your documentation quality is actually improving. And this, I think, is really fascinating. There's some really interesting questions here around this. First, how are people using AI? Especially when it comes to documentation? Well, I think there are two big ways. First, we might use AI to write documentation. So that's good. I don't know, as an engineer, I always hated writing documentation from a blank screen. But if AI generates something to help me get started, that's a good leg up, if you will. The other thing that AI is really good at, though, is summarizing existing documents, right? And so as you're using more AI, you might actually be able to get better utility out of the existing documentation that you have, while you're also improving the quality of the documentation that you and your team have access to. So I think it's a really fascinating way to think about those intersections of how AI is helping across that software delivery lifecycle.
I'll ask a question here that has been in my mind for a long time. So we know that garbage in, garbage out thing. And if you have bad API design, or
Mhm.
let's say you just have a bad product experience and you're trying to duct tape that with AI and automation, have you seen use cases or pain points around that something is fundamentally broken and people are trying to patch up with automation and AI?
Yeah, I think that I think it's really interesting, and certainly these are things that we have to watch out for. I, I can imagine AI, for example, writing documentation about a feature that doesn't exist in your API, as an example, right? Maybe it's looking at other APIs similar to the one that it's currently documenting, and it takes some inferences from there and writes a new document for you. That could be a real challenge. But I think this also points back to this idea that what we need to ensure is that we're getting fast, high quality feedback on any changes that we're making, whether that's a documentation change or a code change. We need good ways to assess that change and understand, is this the correct change to make? Is this not the correct change to make? How else do we need to refine it to make sure that it's right?
And when things do go wrong, one team we all rely back to is incident response and SRE. How do you see AI and automation playing a role in how engineering teams are doing incident response?
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, I don't think you can ever, certainly not today. Maybe never is too far, but certainly not in the foreseeable future. I do not believe that you can replace with AI or with automation the intuition that a human has about how a system works. And that intuition, of course, grows over time. As I work more and more with this system, I have better intuition about it. And as I have more experience dealing with incidents, outages, etc., doing that incident response, I'm learning more and more about how that system works. So I don't think we should be aiming to replace those SREs, those individuals that are doing incident response. But I do think, just like with software engineers, we can augment what they're doing through AI. AI is very good at a number of different things. Just think of giving AI a log trace or a stack of logs and having it summarize them, having it dig through them. I've seen AI be pretty good about spotting anomalies in those logs. Now, again, this is where some human intuition might play in. It might spot an anomaly in a log that has nothing to do with the incident that you're currently fighting. And you need that human to sort of evaluate that and provide that feedback either back to the machines or at least to their incident response. But I do think there's a lot of really fascinating ways that we can start thinking about how do we use AI to augment and to assist the people that are doing incident response. And over time, we as a collective industry are going to continue experimenting and learning and hopefully bringing those lessons to light so that we can all improve together.
And one thing engineers are trying to improve on is how much code they can contribute to, whether it's just by their choice or by being told that you have to produce more code. And we see AI co-pilots everywhere. So we are entering an era of unimaginable productivity. Well, productivity with a quote. How do you see the challenge of managing this much of code? Because the code is being generated, are we testing that code? So from code gen to production, how do you see AI also limiting the challenges of too much code?
Yeah, I think you're onto something here, and I think that this is certainly one of the hypotheses we have from the 2024 data. Why is software delivery performance falling off with the adoption of more AI? One of the reasons is potentially one of our hypotheses is that, as an industry, we're very focused on, as you said, code generation with AI. But the reality is that once you've generated code, it still has to go through a number of steps before it gets into production. Those steps might include documentation, quality assurance, approvals, reviews, etc. And so, if all we use AI for is to generate more code, we're actually just exposing more of those friction points and making those friction points between writing code and delivering code more acute. We feel the pain of them more acutely. And so I think this is a reminder that we should be looking at the entire system and understanding where is the friction or the constraint, and then asking the question, how do we improve that constraint? Oh, and by the way, we have this new tool, AI, in our toolbox. Maybe it can help automate away or eliminate some of that friction. Let's figure out how do we use AI in places other than just code generation. Now, that said, Dewan, I've been playing around with AI for code generation, and I tell you what, it is super fun. It is so fun to use AI to build up things that I might not have even tried to build before, and I can get them working, and they work well. I worry about some of the almost the dopamine addiction that I get when I'm banging away with an AI agent. Like things just work, and but not quite. But like it's just one more thing, and then it'll be ready. Oh, but just one more small thing, and then it'll be ready. And I just keep back and forth with the AI. Next thing I know, it's 3 a.m. And I'm like, oh, I didn't actually need to do this in the first place. I need to go to bed now.
A very important question, Nathan. Are you one of those people who thank their AI agents uh, after every response?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I thank my AI agent after every response. I do tend to, be polite with it, asking please, and certainly saying thank you from here to there. Maybe not every single time.
Well, I don't know if it would appreciate it. Me being Canadian, I try to be overly thankful to it, and I appreciate the feedback, and it also helps me. So I love backend, DevOps, everything, but as soon as you throw some front end at me, I got scared. Like front end has never been for me until AI code gen, and then now even I can spin up a nice looking front end thanks to the Copilot. So we are entering a very strange time indeed.
Yeah, it is fascinating the work that you can get done so quickly with AI. The concern that I always have that goes along with that is, you know, you're not a front end developer. It just generated some front end that looks really good. Is it maintainable? Would someone who is an expert in front end development look at that and be happy? And would they be able to change it over time? These are legitimate concerns. I think we tend to almost discount the value or the skill that other people have, especially when AI can come in over the top and essentially do that same work. But the work that you do, what AI does is not going to replace you. And so you shouldn't expect it to replace those other roles as well. We still need that expertise. We still need that collaboration across both the humans and the AI agents.
Absolutely. The decades of experience that humans learn from AI is taking a snapshot of that and giving us some sort of template to work with. But that is not a template to be deployed to production. That needs to
Not
be reviewed by
necessarily.
real humans with all the privacy concerns, the policies and enforcements, and then only with proper feedback loop it can be used.
Yes.
Now, we're talking about AI a lot, and if you're listening, the one of the reason is our theme for season 4 is AI meets software delivery. And Nathan, if you are to think of DORA for AI, uh, how would those metrics change, and how do you see some of those the key points from that report?
Yeah, for sure. First, I don't think that will change how we measure software delivery performance. I think that those four key measures of software delivery performance, they're still going to be the same. We want to understand how much change can we move through the system, and how safely and reliably can we move that change through the system. That still matters. Where I think we're going to see AI playing a bigger role and bringing in potentially new metrics is more on both the front end of that, right? Like how quickly am I able to generate code? Maybe looking at the number of pull requests that we have per engineer or something like this. Maybe this is going to increase. Maybe the size of those pull requests is going to change. All of this really matters. But also, as we've talked about, like what are the other stages and steps that change has to go through before it lands in production? And how are we measuring those things? So I think that understanding that AI provides us additional assistance and additional capabilities across those capabilities is really interesting. And we can use some of the existing measures that we have to really understand how are things going. That said, AI is also fundamentally changing a number of different things. Some of the things that we've looked into are examples of how do you feel about code ownership? Right? If you wrote the code together with an AI, whose code is that? Is that your code? Is it Gemini's code? Is it yes? It's like shared code. It's really interesting to start thinking about that, and that's another thing that we're really researching this year is what are those human impacts of generating and using more AI throughout that software development lifecycle. So I think that we continually are finding new metrics and new areas to consider, things to look at and understand sort of what's driving that. And I'm really happy that together with Harness, I've been working on a book, an ebook that's all about measuring the impact of AI development tools. That's coming soon. I won't tell you an actual date, but know that it's coming soon, and I would definitely be on the lookout for that.
So listeners, please keep an eye on the book. And engineering leaders, whenever they listen to this podcast, they try to think of, let me take one action item. Let me think of one key aspects when I try to blend in AI with software delivery. And I'm pretty sure you'll have in-depth analysis on that upcoming book. But if you want to share one thing that engineering leaders to keep an eye out for when they want to integrate AI in software delivery, what would that be?
I think for me, the one place to integrate AI into software delivery is where your team feels the most pain. And so if you're a leader, the first thing I would recommend that you do is go ask your team, where is the pain? Where's the friction? What's preventing you from delivering more value? It might be that they say we can't generate code fast enough. It might also be that we can't get feedback fast enough, or that this change approval process just takes too long, it's too heavyweight. These are all indicators of where you might consider how do we bring AI in to help alleviate some of this pain. And so, as a leader, I would basically give you two pieces of advice. One, go ask your team, where does it hurt? And if they can't articulate that very well, the next step I would recommend is get together the cross functional team that's responsible for the application that you're leading and do a value stream map. And that is to map out every step and handoff that a change has to go through from being committed to the version control system all the way through to production. When you bring together a cross-functional team and build up that map together, you are almost guaranteed to find a number of duplicative tasks, a number of friction, a number of handoffs that are unnecessary or that are introducing waste in the system. So as a leader, help your team identify that waste and then work with them to go eliminate it.
There you go. You start from the pain points and you go from there. I
Yes.
have a friend, Captain Canary. Again, apologies to the listeners. You can't see it, but I have some call it a chicken, some call it a duck. It's not a chicken. It's not a duck. It's a canary bird. This is the mascot of Harness. And Captain Canary has a question for Nathan Harvey. Captain Canary
Mhm.
wants to know future predictions. So where do you see AI in software delivery in 3 years?
It's a really great question. Thank you, Captain Canary. DORA is highly tuned for understanding where we are today, which makes it more difficult to make predictions. So this maybe isn't a DORA prediction as much as it is a Nathen prediction. But I say that in 3 years' time, we're going to look back at where we are today, and we're not really like we might look back in fondness of we were at this moment where we had all of this new tech coming into the space. But here we are 3 years in the future, and we now have a much better understanding of how to best utilize it across the software development lifecycle. The reality is that AI is here to stay. We've seen this in our research. We see this, we live it every single day. All of us do as you look around to what's happening. AI is here to stay. And I hope that in 3 years' time, we will have really grasped the best ways to use AI. Because the reality is that today, each and every one of us is getting better at interacting with LLMs and these AI tools that are available. And at the same time, each and every day, the models are getting stronger, the capabilities are getting better. And so I think that we're going to see a real change in how we work. And that change is going to be led by assistance from AI.
And one thing that will shape the change is feedback from practitioners. And
Absolutely.
to get your feedback in 2025 DORA survey, the annual DORA survey is still open. So Nathan, one more time, could you please tell our listeners about the survey?
Yeah, for sure. So this survey is how DORA collects a bunch of our data and insights. But I'd love you to take the survey so that we have more data and insights, but I'd rather you take the survey to help yourself. Because I honestly believe that when you sit down and take this survey and you think about the questions that we're asking, it gives you that moment of reflection. It helps you and your team identify those areas of pain and those areas of potential improvement. And so I actually recommend that individually as a team, each individual takes the survey, and then maybe you schedule a lunch and learn or a discussion, a retrospective that talks about the survey. And actually, if you go to dora.dev/survey, this is where you can take the survey up until July 18th. But on that page, you'll also find a link for a survey discussion guide. And this gives you basically some facilitation ideas for host a meeting with your team to discuss, what things popped, like what things caught your interest in the survey. What are some changes that you want to make tomorrow on your team? So I recommend taking the survey and then getting together with your team and working through that survey discussion guide.
On the note of getting together with your teams, where you can get together with your team is DevOps Days. DevOps Days is a set of global events throughout the globe, and you can network with practitioners, learn about different topics in the space. DevOps Days Dallas is happening September 17th and 18th, and this year Harness is a participating sponsor. So drop by at our booth. We'll be raffling off a Nintendo Switch, and you can use the code ShipTalk to take 20% off regular ticket price. In the first episode of season 4 of ShipTalk podcast, we talked about AI meeting software delivery with DORA lead and developer advocate at Google Cloud, Nathen Harvey. Nathan shared his experience from working with open source communities, the key indicators from DORA, and then what are some of the things to look out for when you're trying to integrate AI in your software delivery. Thank you so much, Nathan. Where can listeners find you online if they want to learn more about your work and DORA?
Sure. Probably the best two places to find me are either LinkedIn or Blue Sky. And just note, my first name is spelled a bit uniquely. It's Nathen, and then my last name Harvey, Harvey. You can find me with that name on both of those platforms. And Dewan, thank you so much for having me. And I also want to just a really quick shout out to Harness because I've been partnering with Harness for a long time now, and they're a gold sponsor for this year's DORA research, and I really appreciate that. And boy, it's so fun working together with you and your team.
Much appreciated for the kind words. Looking forward to bump into you at some of the events. And listeners, please take the DORA survey. Let us know your feedback. Until then, my name is Dewan Ahmed. You can find me on dewanahmed.com and LinkedIn. We are ShipTalk, where we talk about the ins and outs, ups and downs of software delivery. Thank you, Nathen.
Thank you so much.